All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 15 today. We're going to do Detroit music scene and producing music with our buddy Chris Mcintosh.
Hello.
What up?
All right,
Very
so
stern hello.
let's jump right into this thing. So you are responsible for producing two of the better albums to come out of the Detroit area. In my opinion, we got Life After Life and by Simplicity and Incredible Consequence by Bump. How much of like their input did you use when you were recording these albums, and how much of it was just kind of go with the flow and see what works and see what doesn't work?
The two different bands' experience was entirely different. Simplicity for Life After did a number of the recordings outside of Mctech, and then we brought that stuff back and re-edited it, put a bunch of stuff in there. But as far as your original question, what was the process? So they had these backbones of these tunes, and they filled in the gaps. I was a catalyst in that process, probably egging people on, sometimes probably more than I should have, but it was a very joint process. A lot of people were there, although sometimes there was just one or two of us when we would cut certain individual tracks and whatnot. But
how long did that Simplicity album take?
Life After, I don't even remember. I mean, it was extensive by the time they had recorded what they did and brought it to me. But, I'm going to say it was over a few months, at least. Yeah. And what was really kind of cool is that they brought some of the gear that they used in New York down to the studio. So it was nice to experience all the different types of, some different microphones, some different preamplifiers and stuff. But yeah, I believe it was a 2-3 month process. And, it was every day. They're coming down, we're cutting this, cutting that. A lot of the drums were done outside.
So they had all the music written for that?
It was nearly versions of. So they had written the skeleton out in New York for Life After, and a lot of the drums were the actual recordings from back in New York, and then wherever we saw fit, we would fill in the gaps. Certainly vocals and all that was done locally, and guitar solos, and that sort of stuff. But
so you were saying sometimes there'd be one or two people working on something and everybody else would be gone. So how does that work in terms of like, I play music too. I actually record my band using Logic Pro and I do everything for us, but I actually like having somebody else do it and then have their input on stuff because it's just another mind there. It's like almost another instrument. So like how much, when it was just you and that other person, was like, did you then have to wait for them to get back together to hear the takes and see which take worked the best? Or was it something that happened organically where you guys were like, that's it, throw that on there, and then the other dudes would come in and be like, yeah, that sounds awesome? Or how did that work?
It was a mixture of both scenarios, especially with guitar. Brian Sheen is a phenomenal guitar player, and when he would just land one, that was it. That was done. Other various parts, some other people would, I don't want to use the word nitpick, but if it came down to that, it would be, all right, why don't we craft this, or why don't we shape this or produce this a little bit differently? A lot of that was avoided because that's what we did in that recording process, was to dance around a little bit. But let me get back to something that you asked, like what was the difference? That was the way the Bump worked. It was a little bit different. It was a little bit more intense. It was a 3-month process, but it was their gear here all the time. Microphone cables ran throughout the house. things getting done every single day. And it was all here, two here. These people.
So they were kind of Led Zeppelin-y. They were like, let's rent the castle and all fucking hang out in the castle and get all the shit done kind of a mentality.
Well, yeah, it was. Yeah, let's. These people would patch up this wall this day, and this day, this group of people would patch up this wall. I mean, a huge influence on that entire record is Evan Perry as well. But we were there, the catalyst, the entire time for that process for them, and wanted to provide a good, open, comfortable, wide open space where it was whoever was there. It's just that's what kind of happened that day. There were some days where, Stir would crank out some stuff. We listened back, and York had a great vision for that record. And he might say, "Oh, let's revisit this, revisit that." And everybody said, "Let's revisit this." Everybody had Clads, Nads, Clint, Stir, York. Everybody revisited it all the time, and it was just a constant challenge, especially with Evan in the house, because he wouldn't let anything squeak by, so that was a huge lift. So the two processes were different. I don't know if what I explained actually defines what the difference was, but one was a little bit more laid back, and one was just a blanket of intensity that just occurred for 90 days straight minimum.
And the bump Incredible Consequence was the intense one, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that was a world.
Yeah, I remember.
You can feel that in the music for sure. Like when I listen to that whole CD, I mean, it's been a little bit. I used to listen to it a lot, but you can feel in like Stir's guitar licks. It's almost like spread out and just so much ethereal intensity behind some of those little runs on some of that stuff. It's like what you're saying is how they recorded it. That comes through the music, I think, which is actually interesting. If you think about when people record albums, there's definitely a theme, and that theme is whatever's driving the music at the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how it was. It was just a flurry of activity, and we chased after, every angle, whether it was the recording, do it again, rerun it. And mixing was an entirely different animal than just producing, as far as the production of it. But yeah, it was a flurry of activity, a lot of input, but with what I attempted to do was try to lasso all that energy. And of course, like I said, with Evan being a huge creative input and a catalyst in that process, whereas our job is simply this: what's in here goes on a set of speakers, and that's the bottom line.
Well, I think you did a good job at that. So
I appreciate that. I've enjoyed. I still listen to it. I mean,
so do I.
Yeah, I do too.
I was a part of it, but I thought it was the writing, their intent, their vision is what happened. I was lucky enough to be a part of that catalyst behavior, but what I think they had up here got up there.
Well, and I think both of those are very, I mean, with everybody from the area that we're from, obviously, everybody kind of knows about it, anybody that's really into music. And even when I lived here in Chicago, I still do. Bump would come through here, Simplicity would come through here. I'd definitely check out their shows, and it was always a big old dance party. So there was something going on with the music and the scene, and then just what was happening in terms of what everybody was listening to and what they were into. And that was, like Detroit's gone through different phases throughout the history with rock and glam rock and different, metal and different stuff. And if you look at that, was almost like the little jam band. I mean, it's still kind of going on for that, I guess to that point. But, there's always this like underground music scene in Detroit, and it's always really cool stuff. But I think that specific little blip in time where there was something special going on,
It was super special. We raised all kinds of hell with noise, and just for every song that got recorded, there was,
an angel got its wings.
Yeah. For every song that was recorded, there was 5 hours of random jamming and capturing cool stuff. You know what I mean? So it was and not to, I mean, there's a slug of bands, you know, that you could play, you know, Natives of the New Dawn. I mean, all these little random in that Hogan Says, you know,
Yeah.
and working with LLE, a couple bands up north. There were a few times it was kind of funny that a friend of a friend of a friend, you know, from working with me would go out and it would reach to Chicago, it would reach to far up north, it would reach, you know, to certain parts of town, getting calls from folks from doing that activity. That's what I mean. Mine I'm most proud of is I mean, not to repeat myself, but get what's here out there, and that's what all that work was for.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff really did get out. I actually remember when we were all fucking around in Kalamazoo. I remember listening to Simplicity play. I think they played, it was like Higher Grounds in Vermont or something, and we were like listening to it on, I don't want to say it was a podcast, but it was like the radio through the internet. And it was like kind of like a new thing at the time.
Ben Kim had it.
Yeah, and then look at where we are now with all this stuff, this technology and all the streaming and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I just remember like, man, these guys are killing it, and they're doing it in different states and different regions and different stuff. So, like I said, there was something special going on there. It's unfortunate that I don't think that, you know, either of those bands or some of the other bands that you mentioned, for that matter, really got the attention that they deserve, just because of what music is now, and it's more of a money-driven marketing thing of who looks the best or who can hit the highest note, and less about the actual substance behind, you know, the music.
Yeah, I mean, that can for sure happen. To back up just a little bit on the process of everything, what you just talked about was what a unique time, at least my experience has been. You know, in 1991, you know, you get the little Fostex 4-track, right? And I'm in college, and we're just wanting to play some tunes, and we were blown away. You know, oh, gee, you know, you can do 1 and you can do 2, and you can hear yourself jam. You know what I mean? With
right,
but you can hear it through your own speakers. I mean, that from that point in time till now, you know, maybe, you know, there's all kinds of stuff going on, but there's been I'm going to say we're not plateauing, but near there, in terms of just a plethora of technology that's out there. But my point is, when you look back and think that the experiences, even and the aforementioned, you know, subjects of the bands and the Simplicity and Bump and the technology, some of the experiences I personally went through with that technology phase, with that, you know, continuous improvement mentality, to get better gear, to get better things. And once upon a time it was tape. Once upon a time it was two outboard tape machines SMPTE'd together and this kind of stuff. And then there was ADAT, and then there was this, and then there was that. The next thing you know, you've just had a gigantic mixing board USB'd into your interface, and the whole process lended itself to, you know what, we don't have to deal with all these weird technical issues. We can just do what we want to do when we do it, and it's, you know, bazillion times cheaper than what it used to take to go into a studio and actually accomplish the things that we did. So,
well, how much different do you think the albums would be if you recorded them, like, say, today, or, you know, around this year? Would it be completely different because of the technology, or?
Oh, I mean, between when we did it and now, the technology wouldn't technically be different.
Oh, okay.
I'll throw in just another curveball.
All that stuff was analog, wasn't it?
Well, when we're talking about way back in the day, you know, what your home studio was, which is what I did, was, yeah, tape. You know what I mean? This was just like cassette tapes that went in it.
Right.
You know, and all of a sudden, you know, when the digital world came in, and I'm a huge proponent of that stuff. You know, back in the day, there might have been issues with it, but the translating of analog into digital is perfectly fine. It works just fine today, especially when the way you want to mix it. It's all a big mush. It all works out. My point is that it wasn't such a huge production to say, you want to come back to this song on Monday, and you had to load the tape, wind the tape, put the mixer exactly where it was, take notes. Nothing was automated. I mean, with
that's insane.
The big studio, whereas even with the little 4-track, you have to remember, how was it set? How was my input set? What volume was my input? I mean, all that stuff, all that went away because it's all pre-programmed right into the interface. But the point being that the creative process, you know, if my part was managing all those what became minute engineering sort of details, then the only left thing to worry about was equipment. And people buy great equipment, you get great microphones, you get good converters, and all of a sudden, what Led Zeppelin, you made a reference earlier, many years ago. Sure, I'm not arguing the tonality of records like that, but a process to manage something like what they accomplished is quite a bit different. Excuse me.
Quite a bit of money.
Yeah. Well, it's not only big money, but the point is that you can get there as a creative person, and you don't have to be Led Zeppelin to afford to do something like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
What now? What you were just saying about the technology and everything, I think digital was coming around when you were doing those albums. Was there any discussion, or was it just all analog and that's just how it was going to be because that's what most of the gear was? Or
no, for the Simplicity and Bump, it was pure AD. It was analog recording gear, microphone, analog microphones, preamplifiers, mixing boards, and then converted at some point using different gears at different time to AD that. Back in the day when I had early Mctech, it was a cassette tape and a mixing board, and so it was technically all analog. You analog signals hitting a board, and you're recording on a tape, even though it was just small little cassette tape instead of the big 2-inch reels, whatever people were using. But the point of it was having good microphones, good gear, and good converters.
What obviously I think Kevin and I learned this. I mean, we mess around, but these mics that we got, these one of the 7Bs, I mean, it's like I tried other mics. I'm like, this thing blows this shit. So I think mics are huge into that. Now, when you are doing like recording the vocals and stuff like you did with Jorg or Sheehan or any of the guys from Simplicity, did you isolate it? Would they, I've been over, I think when Hogan Says was recording and you had Hogan in the little booth alone wailing out his little angel voice. But was that something you did all the time, or did you ever try and capture like colored sound with something in the background or like light, something else? Or was it always just isolate the vocals and then mix it from there?
No, it was definitely not about isolate the vocals. It all had to do with what's in here gets out. So depending on the vision is how you want to record it. So when you want to put the vocals in a certain position or a certain space or a certain ambiance, you think about how the best way you want to capture it. So if you want to capture it really dry and build that space around the music, then you record it dry and you build that space using the different techniques and that kind of stuff. But inherently in the vocal, if I want to record a vocal that has an echo like that, then that's how we would record it. We did a number of vocals with a project that I did with Ryan Sheehan from Simplicity, the Back Off, and we did some vocals with Simplicity there where we would actually use the front room with the microphone, and you want to encapsulate and capture that space. When you go to mix it, you can't take that out. So that's where the threshold comes in, is where do I want the position of these vocals to be? Because if you record it with this much space, but it's supposed to sound like that, then you have to record it isolated, and then you build it into the space. However, if where you want the vocal to be big, you don't worry about going smaller. Then you record it in a more authentic environment for best, placement.
Gotcha.
You want to talk a little bit about recording Tony Newhand from Natives of the New Dawn?
Is that him specifically?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I mean, he was, the vocals, the keyboard playing, the musicality, he had a huge vision on how a lot of stuff, all of them did.
Didn't you have to put him outside the room or something because he was so loud?
I don't know if I recall that specifically.
I might just be making this shit up right now. I don't know.
But when Tony would belt, it's loud. We did a bunch of recordings that we did. I remember we did what's called a mid-side capture technique with with microphones and stuff, just because he would project with such intensity that the
shatter windows.
Well, yeah, definitely. But the way that he would sing, that you wouldn't necessarily guess it, but because of the way that we captured the microphone, the mid-side, if you listen to the record, at a minuscule level, you'll hear his voice barely waver back and forth. So he's really intense. You catch him from back, and depending on literally inches back from his inflection point, that it would be captured weighted to the left and right on the mid-side technique. We didn't do all his vocals that way, but definitely he could just, he's got a craft. He can just,
yeah, he's got some pipes. I saw a clip of Fluffhead, their gig. And I think he came on with them and sang Wolfman's Brother. This dude was belting it out.
Yeah, and besides the singing ability, just had a vision, was just knew what he, you know what I mean? Everybody.
Yeah, he's a sick musician for sure.
Oh man, and it was a great, fantastic experience as far as I'm concerned. They did a great job. I did a bunch of stuff with that gang.
What do you consider your out of all the stuff you've done, all the years you've been doing it, what do you consider your masterpiece? It can even be something that you've done yourself. I mean, it doesn't have to be another band. Do you have something that you're just so proud of? You're like, this is fucking it right here.
It's fucking Wagnalls, bro.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't know if I could specifically put the nail in the tune, but I would say that stuff that I did, I mean, I had, a few bands back in the day that I recorded some stuff. I had jam sessions even to the tune of 2 or 3 weeks ago that just are fun to listen to. But if I don't know what my masterpiece, I guess I don't think I could judge what my masterpiece is. I'd have to ask everybody who's known me my entire life. My masterpiece is whoever walked away happy as a customer. My masterpiece is whoever walked away as a musician that said they're fucking proud of that. Scott Fargo made a fantastic record here. Gretchen Wolf made a fantastic, and Simplicity. All the guys did. They made individual tunes. Evan and I have done countless ridiculous tunes over the day, with the Gerbil Master. But and Kevin, has done a bunch of tunes here, and
threw some feces at the wall over there. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, if we could be a fly in the wall, or if the walls could talk, but. So I guess my masterpiece is, I would just say my masterpiece is having the heartbeat and the brain and the ears and the means to try and do what we all accomplished.
I was going to say one of the big things I took from going over there, I met so many cool people. It was a great, awesome time.
That's what I'm most proud of. It's just the influence. These people didn't know these people until we come down and we have a massive jam session, and then there's friendships born out of that, and different bands who were at fisticuffs. All of a sudden they're like, "Oh, you're at Max recording? Oh, we're opening the door and bringing equipment down the stairs," and people were like, "Oh, all right, well, cool, yeah, let's have a beer, let's." Just the knocking of all the passion is, I guess that's what what I'm most proud of, is that it was a place for all that shit to clash.
Yeah, broke a couple guitars and had a couple brews.
Whew. Yeah.
Now, is that little wrinkle in time, is that something that now you looking back at it, you're like, okay, this is what this was. This was like lightning in a bottle. But when looking towards the future, is that something you're trying to recreate or recapture at any point, or is that just something that kind of is what it is, and you just move forward and do what you do, and then
can't recreate that?
If it happens again, it happens again. If it doesn't, it doesn't, kind of a thing.
It's kind of if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I've been a professional person the entire time. I mean, not that anybody else is not professional, but I've always had my career. I studied. I worked hard to get certain credentials. Next Thursday, I hit my 20-year anniversary at my company, and
congratulations!
Yeah, congrats!
I've had a handful of positions that have just basically defined who I am and are a major part of my life. Just as recording music and more has been. So would I record something if somebody said, hey, I want to record this next Friday? Absolutely. Put the time on the books, get the equipment. It's all out. Everything's like it used to be. The mics are drums, the amplifiers are down there. There's plenty of guitars, and there's plenty of spirit. So to answer your question, yeah, I would do it again. Could I take on like a project like Bump did back in 2005 and 2006? Probably not in the space that I live in these days, because it's just it's a little different.
Right.
Being engaged to a very special person, Juliana Jones.
Congrats.
And that's not where if it happens here, sure, it can happen here. That was a medley of wake up on Sunday morning and say, what just happened the last 5 days? But but to answer your question, I absolutely, I'd love to make music. Like I said, we record and look back and play back what we listen to, put some tweaks on it, still mix it, play with it a little bit. The whole activity, the whole task of accomplishing this to the speakers, something I'd always do, if not just for what I and my buddies play, but if somebody needed help.
Right on. So, but kind of like a piggyback off that last question, did you feel like when you were in that moment that you truly were in that moment, or was it just something that you're just doing what you do and it just so happened that that's what was, or were you like able to have scope in the scenario, special shit going on here?
I mean, it was, you never thought about it, the thing like, oh, I'm in the moment when it was happening. You just did it, and we had a great time. And it wasn't until it's like for every day that you stop doing it, then you start thinking about what it meant to be in that moment.
Yeah.
So here I am X amount of years later, and you think back and go, God damn, was that fun? Would I want to wake up and do that tomorrow? No, not necessarily. But at the time, you're just doing it. And everybody, that's what life is all about, looking back and reflecting that was a great time.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to fucking enjoy something in the moment because you don't know. You're doing it, and then when you look back, you go, damn, that was incredible. I don't know if that actually will ever happen again, but when you're doing it, you don't even think about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, sure, you can be at a show or you can be looking over a mountain, and a second later, you can be like, oh my God, it feels so great to be here. Talking about what we're talking about, it's hard for me to, I guess, say like when I was doing that, was I at a breathtaking peak on a mountain, or was it like the moment my son was born, or was it like, the moment I met Juliana? These are things that are so important because that it defines who I am. It's what I've done for a long time, is to love music and all that kind of stuff. That you look back now and think, golly, wasn't that fun? It was fun at the time, don't get me wrong. And you say, like, this is fun. But like I said, what I was proud of is I look back and you realize that this many years just blows by and you think, man, that was a really special time.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the SNL, like they always ask those guys, did you realize it was a special moment? And they're just like, no, we were just working our asses off.
That's it.
And, all you were focused on was getting the skit done and, making it as best as you can. Same thing with Seinfeld. He couldn't enjoy it because he was working so hard. Then you look back, you go, damn, that's one of the best times of my life. But whatever. I think that's just human. That's natural human shit,
Absolutely. You look back and go, God damn, that was fun. And you can't at the time, but sometimes what you thought was fun at the moment, you look back a day later and you're probably like embarrassed to tell anybody that it ever happened.
So. The other weird thing too is, okay, so all that stuff happened in your house, in your basement, and in your closets, and wherever anything was being recorded. Isn't it weird though that like you can have something like Incredible Consequence, like you said, just like it's very intense because that's what they were doing, was something that was very intense, and then Simplicity was a little bit more laid back, and you can feel that in their music too. It's just like Manistee or Put Your Gun Down, so like any of that stuff, it's all super chill, awesome stuff. And it's weird that all of that music that's so diverse, that's so different, all kind of has this like personality that's based like you're almost like your house is a living thing, and these are like, you know, creatures that were given birth out of it.
Well, we probably gave birth to a lot of things down here.
Yeah. Even Brad, dude.
That's fucking that's nasty. Yeah.
God, fist fights, you know, hugs,
yeah, tears,
tears,
vomit.
It was I couldn't say it, you know, again, it was just an amazing time to work and have fun and just do the stuff. I mean, like I said, I had my professional job. I'd work my dick off all day, and you come home and there'd be 3 guys parked outside the street, you know what I mean? Or Clint and Stir, and you pull in the driveway, and the moment you walk in, you crack a beer and you turn on microphones and you start getting shit done. And you did it until 2 in the morning sometimes.
It's actually a pretty good idea for a sitcom. I work my ass off by day.
Oh, if we had our cameras now,
and then at night I unleash.
Now.
Do you is recording your passion then? Is that like your thing, or is music in general, or like what specifically would you consider your passion?
It's probably, if you were asked what year.
Okay, yeah, that's a better question. When you got into all this stuff, like what about, obviously you play music, you record music, you're around music, you produce music. What specifically is like your passion involved with all that? Or is it just the music, the common glue between it?
Well, what my original passion was playing the guitar and playing the drums and writing music, and then having the ability to learn how to capture my own stuff. And then I just upgraded this equipment, upgraded this equipment, upgraded this equipment. Became absolutely fascinated with capturing tone. No matter if it was guitar or drums, I mean, the complexities and redundancies I went through trying to learn how to do all this crap. That's what drove it all, was I could record my own stuff. And then when it kind of branched off, that all right, I'm starting to have this, you know, this affinity towards.
How old were you when you started doing all this?
It's 91. I guess it was what, second year in college.
Emma wasn't even born yet.
So you were kind of a late bloomer in the whole music thing. You didn't get into it till after you had been out of high school and everything.
No, I started playing guitar when I was 11.
Okay.
12 years old, and drums, you know, the next year after that. Whenever I couldn't have a drum kit in the house, but whenever I could play one, I was obsessed with it.
That was outright defiant.
Sent to military school and all. But that's when the guitar and the writing, and we became obsessed with jamming, and my friends did growing up. And then as soon as it became to that 91 time frame is when the whole onset of capturing, the whole recording stuff started to kick in, because I started to work with some guys in college and whatnot.
You started with the Talk Boy and then worked your way up the...
I mean, yeah, but we were knee high to a grasshopper learning Metallica tunes, you know, Guns N' Roses tunes. Van Halen's been my favorite. The first thing I learned Christmas night was a little bit of Eruption. You know what I mean? When I was 12 years old, just a little guy. But so it's been the whole being a musician, being a part of it, being creative, being a part of it, being captured, being a catalyst to making other people do it, is kind of the force of where I'm at.
Yeah, man, you've inspired a lot of people.
Well, I don't know.
You gotta be pretty proud about that.
That's great. I mean, that's what it was all for.
I'm not joking, yeah.
To be involved, you know. And
well, I think too, like you not only did you inspire people, but you were also the vehicle that allowed them to do their dream. You know, like you helped facilitate people's dreams by recording albums, because that's what an album is. It's a dream. It's, I'm going to take a piece of my soul, write all these songs, you know, and put this stuff together, and it's passion and it's love. And then you are the person that kind of like sews it all together. Not that, you know, obviously the band writes everything and does a lot of the organizing and stuff, but to have that person there, not only that, but you knowing what you know and how to do it, and the technology and the gear that you supply to sell, you know, it's a lot of stuff involved with that. So, I mean, you really did help facilitate some people's dreams, you know?
Yeah, I guess, again, I say that word catalyst. The people that I've worked with through the years, they worked to write their stuff. They worked to create. They created it. I didn't create anything. What I was there for was just like a tool for them to filter through. So, some guys really weren't interested in giving a rat's ass what I suggested. I want it to sound like this, or if I had an idea, no, that's not what we want to do, and that's fine. But then I was just like purely engineer, purely capture, sort of a behavior. But when it all just became this integrated and being a part of, yes, that's what I'm proud of, is facilitating what people had in their heads to what went on speakers, and that was a lot.
Yeah, it's almost like they provide the painting, but you're the paper in the frame.
No, they bring their own paper. They bring them their own paint. They bring their own brushes.
You're the art dealer.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that tell them up at different times to get the fuck off their ass and paint.
Oh yeah.
I don't mean that they had motivation. I guess I was just an idea guy.
Whoa, bro! I like my metaphor, man.
Dude, the world needs idea guys and visionaries. That's part of the problem. We got a lot of doers, not a lot of thinkers.
Well, it was and it's all translated into different parts of my life. Right now, I'm an IT guy, so I've always been a techie, a decal guy, OCD type of guy when it comes to certain things about patching microphone cables into this, into that. Well, that all translated into setting up servers and understanding how networks work and all that kind of stuff. It's all about pipes, water, and on and off. So it's all been for things that even speak outside of music, but the whole engineering process altogether.
What in terms of
bad motherfucker.
In terms of like when you're recording these bands, like you said, there's certain bands that say, hey, this is how it's going to be, this is the way I want it, and then there's other bands that want your opinion and you give it, so like a piece of you enters the equation then. But has there been or is there, I guess, ever been anybody that came down there with an exact idea that you helped them facilitate that the way they exactly wanted it, and it came out fucking amazing? Like, I am sure most of the stuff you've done like that, but is there been like one thing where you were surprised that what they had envisioned worked out in that way because there was no collaboration really?
There's always been some sort of collaboration. I'm not sure that I could pick out something that said, somebody that came down and said, all I want you to do is to record this.
Just hit record and I'll do the fucking rest.
Yeah, I nothing.
Really, that surprises me actually. I would think someone would come down, arrogant motherfucker, and
well,
be like, I want to record this. Just push the record button, and I already have it all figured out.
Well, there was some, but
we want the names right now.
But that was the kind of I guess that's what made me different than other studios in here. Everybody has great people that work in different studios, but that was the flavor. I can't. Maybe that's why I can't remember, because that's just what they wanted to hear, and I wasn't impressed with it. But
yeah,
there were some people that were pretty strict on, this is the way I want it to sound, this is the way we want to do it. But usually there was, a door open with most of the people I remember working with, that said, hey, what do you think? There's been bands that play something and they say, what do you think? And I say, oh, that'll work just fine. Because I know it ain't getting any better. But I use the word ain't, but I don't want to use the term beginner. It was like it wasn't ripe. You know what I mean? It wasn't a situation. So you just kind of say, you know what? This was an experience for these folks. They don't know anything. They're very new in the process. Right. Quite frankly, they wouldn't understand.
You explained it. They didn't know anything. We get it. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember one time, it was like the first solo I had to play there. I think it was for Citrus, man. I was dumping my drawers.
And Max probably really did have some poo. He had some poo.
I never even played in front of people.
I listened to that the other day, Kevin, and I thought,
Yeah.
look at
He had some diapers for you. We
Oh, so I
remember.
played the notes. I played very seldom notes. I just wanted to make sure they were a note that would go over the chord sequence.
but that was a
And
good.
then Mac, yeah, then you put a ton of delay on it.
Yeah, LLE project was great.
Yeah, fun stuff, man.
So one more question I got for you. I know you're into psychology too. Do you think, since little think experiment here, do you think if you had been doing all this in an actual studio, like a separated building in some commercial or business district, as opposed to your house, do you think that has an effect on people? Like, besides all the chicanery that was going on with the drinking and people just hanging out and having fun, obviously it's a relaxed environment, but do you think that that had an impact on the music? And besides what was being ingested, more about like the atmosphere? Like, do you think that had an effect on why, you know, stuff came out good or people felt relaxed there?
I think it is absolutely. You know, it. When you say what's the difference between, you know, professional studio and Mctech in the house and the basement and that sort of feel? That's a where it is, what it is, it happens how it happens kind of moment. I mean, let's talk about some of the greatest music that's ever been made in history. Did they make it in what we would consider a studio today?
Mm-hmm.
No. It was a completely different environment, and you're a product of your environment and feeling comfortable. And some of the studios that I've been around in Detroit, these professional studios, some of them I've liked, some of them I haven't. And what was, again, not me trying to sell, you know, a product or a promise or something, or the only promise, I guess, I want a shot to get what's in here on speakers. I know I've done that like 29 times in the last hour. But
but obviously that's important, because that's what you're thinking. I mean, that's important to know what you're thinking, because obviously we're trying to pick apart what made all this so special. If that's what your main theme was, I mean, that's important, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was a comfortable environment. You know, I've had friends of mine that have recorded here. Some of the people in the bands that have been mentioned in this discussion that have come back and said, yeah, I've been in this studio, I've been in that studio, and this, you know, this is what I liked about Mctech. This is what I didn't like. This is what I did like. We've got some compliments about that. No matter what, somebody told me that no matter what studio they've recorded, the best sounding drum kit was at Mctech. And I don't know why, but that's been a huge passion of mine, is capturing drums the way that I think, my vision of how they are in speakers and stuff. But yeah, I think it has everything to do with it. Would it be better if I had, you know, 50,000 square foot space with A rooms and B rooms and C rooms? I'd love to have that experience.
Let's do it.
Maybe someday, or, you know, buy the properties here, and here's the drum house and the guitar house and the vocal house, and it's all tied together by fiber, and everything's just peachy. but you know, but to what it creates to what you want to get. And that's probably why Mctech phased out originally, is because more of the people that were coming to Mctech they didn't want to buy computers. They didn't want to buy, you know, 24 microphones. They didn't want to manage USB mixers and blah, blah, blah. But as the cost of that stuff comes down and the understanding of it and the use of it becomes a little bit more in front of you, just as it just, you know, we took away from the guy that was an analog engineer at a local studio and said, all right, I can do this in my friggin' house.
Mm-hmm.
All I have to do is just spend 15 grand on microphones and preamplifiers, as opposed to $150,000 for the space, you know, and then this for the equipment. That, you know, that's why that everybody's their own engineer, everybody's their own producer these days. And that's why it was a unique time, I guess, to kind of tie back to what I was saying before, to what it meant to go from analog to digital, was understanding the gear. I kind of broke the ice to understand it, master it. And in some scenarios, if you told me to go back and do this and do that to a track, I'd have to think for a minute, because it's been a number of years since I've done, you know, some of that editing to the degree that we did a number of years ago. But, you know, To answer your question, where you record and how you record has everything to do with it, but I do not think one is better than the other.
Okay. Well, I guess, yeah, because what you're saying makes sense. I mean, yeah, you would be more comfortable at a house doing how you did it. But then if you think about it too, you could make an argument that going into a professional setting, have you, as long as you don't have any nerves or yips or anything, that might be a scenario that makes you thrive too, because it's forcing you, okay, this is fucking real. I'm in a big time studio. I got to get this shit done. So I could see it going both way, like what you're saying, like not one's better than the other. Maybe the way that it happened helped facilitate because there was, everybody was younger, like didn't have all the tools,
Yeah, the space of feeling comfortable, I guess, was more what I'm getting at. I mean, sure, a high budget studio has, or if I have one LA2A, they've got 16.
Right.
Or if I've got one of these preamps, they have 20 of them. And so the level of gear comes with the cash, but the comfortability, the maintenance of a record has come far more simpler. And that's where when you manage songs that are 40 to 60 to 70 tracks and being able to manage that width of a project, and that's not, maybe I'm speaking out of line, but your average Joe goes up to Guitar Center and buys an interface and buys Cubase. Sure, you're a 5-piece band, but when you talk about, I've touched on, I think, to be proud and not just to be proud of, I've touched on some projects that were massive in terms of the logistics of how it gets recorded, organization of the files.
What did you do it at? Was all that Pro Tools? Was it Logic? Like what were you using to do all that stuff?
Most years I was using Cubase. Nowadays, I mean, I still have Cubase and maintain it, but I use Logic Pro.
Yeah, that's what I used. I love it.
That's a solid one.
Yeah, it's perfect. I mean,
I've been trying to get Kevin to get this thing. This kid's like,
I'll get it.
Yeah, they all have their little tweaks of functionality, but it's just not the old Intellivision versus Atari argument, or not argument, but discussion that whatever you capture with, if you feel comfortable, but engineering and mastering those water flows of all the auxiliary channels and all that, blah, blah, blah. I mean, my point is once all that became manageable on a device instead of a big studio, then all of a sudden but it still can't replace the expertise, the understanding, and the ingenuity to manage the whole thing.
Sure.
Well, I got GarageBand. Is that good enough?
That'll work just fine as well. There's the one greatest tool, the two greatest tools to sound like an AT guy are the ins and the outs. I mean, if you got good music amplification, good instruments you're recording through good microphones. And today, preamps, you can buy some that are $1 bazillion. You can get some that are just interfaces. But that being, if you record good stuff and you mix and you critically analyze it with good outward listening gear to mix it, then you're fine. You can pretty much accomplish anything.
Yeah.
All right, I got one last little thing for us. You have to pick one song. Each of us, we're gonna pick one song. If we're stuck on a desert island and one song was on repeat that Mac has recorded, what would you want that one song to be?
Jesus, man.
Hogan,
how do you do that?
First.
I gotta think about this shit.
All right, well then I'll go first. I'm gonna have to say I love Incredible Consequences, like a whole album, but I'm gonna have to say I think Manistee on repeat by Simplicity.
Nice. That's a great pick. I mean, I love a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, but what could you listen to every day and not bash your own fucking skull in?
Oblique by Bump.
Okay, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah,
great tune. Antidote, love it. I could listen to it all day long.
I like Antidote.
Magnol's Back with Evan. I mean, there's far too many.
There's a native song. It's like yeah. You know what that is? Right. I don't know what the name of these songs are. So
yeah, we recorded the saxophone.
Yeah,
that one, the professional.
What's the name of that song? It's called Yeah.
Yeah, hold on. Let me look.
I mean, I could sit here all
He's
day.
Like, let me pull up the original DAW file here.
There's a lot of stuff. I mean, how could you even say the one song you want to listen to for the rest of your life?
No, not that you want to. It's what you would listen to if you were stuck on a desert island. It was on repeat.
Yeah. So if that were the case, hold on, let me look at something.
There was a couple of back off tunes that were like sad, and they conjured up some good emotion for me. I don't remember the names of them.
Wonderful. Can you guys hear this when I play?
Now we're having some fun.
I can't hear it.
Tony appears behind them.
Yeah, now I can.
Yeah, this is good shit, man. This is like Motown.
It's baby making music right there.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Can you hear it all right?
Kind of. Yeah, I can hear that now.
Can't seem to put my finger on.
My lights just got lower.
Kevin's got his hand down his pants right now.
So, I mean, there is that. Oh, here, this is the way it finally ended up here. When we talk about wonderful,
That song's great.
it sounded like this.
It's pretty fucking loud, bro.
Yeah.
Is it loud?
Yeah.
Let me do this.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
That should be submitted. You have a glass of scotch in your hand. It should be a scotch commercial.
Yeah, right.
The dude just picks up the glass and the music starts, dude. There you go.
I don't know if that's the song I was talking about, though.
No, it's not?
I don't know. I'll figure it out.
Stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to.
We
there,
should do
big
this
boy.
again, though, for sure.
Yeah, we'll have you back. But thank you for coming on to our buddy Mac. Thank you, bro. It's been enlightening
Yeah,
as
that was
usual.
awesome.
Maurice, thank you for having me on the show.
No problem. No problem.
Great, good times. Good to see you guys both, and rock and roll. I'd love to jump in on another talk. You know, we get into this, gun control, all that kind of shit. Or, you know,
Whoa,
get in-
bro.
we-
I don't know how far we get into that kind of stuff, man.
We can get into some crazy shit next
Yeah.
time, but we'll figure that out. But thanks again for coming on. And,
We got certain parameters we gotta watch out for, bro.
Okay.
We'll catch you guys on the flip side, though, when we don't know what the next episode is. So we'll see you next time.
All right.